Namaskar and welcome to this exciting episode of Sattology Debunking Mythology. Sattology means science of truth or study of truth, and opposite of that is mythology, which means science or study of fake lie or imagination. Sattology builds your identity and mythology destroys your identity. One of the important things is that we are coming on the road shows. We have an annual event in San Diego every July. It is the third Friday of the July. So this will happen this time on 22nd July in San Diego. If you are joining in person, do join. You will love to see the exciting panel. And also coming in October in DC area. So where we will be showcasing, and many of our speakers that you see on our channel will be invited to speak over there. So please do join us in San Diego on July 22nd. So I have a very good, today we are having a very good friend, and does a lot of research. He's a material scientist, and he has that. It's so surprising that nowadays the engineers and scientists are trying to codify the Indian history, and the humanities are just twiddling on their fingers, waiting for somebody from the Western masters to speak on it. So let us welcome Dr. Raja Ram Mohan Roy.
Namaskar, Aditya.
Namaskar. Isn't that true? What I said? The engineers and scientists are now working on the history, and the humanities are twiddling their fingers.
Uh, the engineering and science background gives you a way of thinking, a critical reasoning that you can apply to history as well. The people in history, they're probably just stuck with whatever is there, and they have just accepted it, and they're just making, you can say, probably the marginal changes. But what I am proposing in these talks is that we really have a much bigger problem, like a structural problem that we need to fix.
Like, if you look at the Veda, Puran, and our Shastra has critical reasoning inbuilt into them. Every sadhu is questioning everything.
Absolutely.
Even Arjun questions Krishna Bhagavan also. How can I know that you are speaking truth? You and I are both same age. He asked that question, and he gives a very convincing answer over there.
Absolutely, Aditya. And that's the most important difference between Hinduism and other like Western religions. Is in those religions you accept whatever is written, is given, is said. But in Hinduism, you figure it out yourself. You got to have your own experience. Those things you have to accept after. If you have that kind of spirituality, that kind of persistence, then you can experience yourself, and you can verify yourself.
Yeah. So in Hindu culture, it is naturally scientific because we are given independence of thought, and nobody is tell if you question anything, we are not told "Sir tan se juda" or you cut your head off. Blasphemy. Blasphemy is one of the biggest obstructors to free speech today. That because anything can become blasphemy, nowadays. So in Hindu culture, we have this freedom of thought. कि खुल के बात करो यार, खुल के, like you speak openly, question everything, and when you're satisfied, then you accept what you saw. So
Absolutely, Aditya. In fact, if you go through the Sanskrit literature, you'll find that even like ordinary folks, they will question like grammarians, like whether are you
that's
speaking right.
that's right. That's right. Like you can easily question कि ये word ठीक नहीं है. Like there was a very simple mantras were there, and one matra here and there, the complete meaning of mantra changes. So Gayatri mantra becomes from Guru to Gau, which is Guy. So
Absolutely.
one matra, Guru Ve Nama or Guru Vai Nama.
Yes.
So it's like that. So thank you so much. So we will continue our alternative history series, and we are today covering Antioka.
Yes, a very, very important part of the reconstruction of history, because the whole history is built around the identification of these five Greek kings who are mentioned in the 13th major rock edict.
one interesting thing is the Oxford University, a few last few years, called the entire Greek history as mythology.
Mhm.
Because I thought that because the Oxford and Cambridge, they are one of the most closed-minded campuses. Like they are driven by the Church of England, and the ghost of Henry VIII is inside the campus, living over there. So they want to see everything from a very myopic prison of British Christianism. So do you think that's the word? That's why they call Greek history as mythology?
I mean, people are figuring out what's going on. I mean, and I have also presented and will present that even the Greek historians themselves called themselves the earlier ones liars.
That's
That they
right.
are
That's right. The Greeks called liars and the Christians called Romans as liars. So if the Christians called Romans as liars, then how can they confirm that Jesus was the actual historical personality? Because they are themselves calling the historians as liars. And Romans wrote all the history supposedly when Jesus was also there. So if
right.
they are liars, then who goes? Do you think there is a rational thinking over there in any of these people?
I mean, there are all kind of thinkers there. I mean, there are people who want to dig out. So there are people digging out, and there are people who don't want the truth to come out.
True. So we can get started, Dr. Roy, and we'll discuss in that.
Excellent. So I'll start sharing the screen,
Sure.
and can you see my
Yes.
presentation now?
Yes. We can see
Uh,
very clearly.
okay. So thank you, Aditya. So as mentioned, today we are going to talk about the Greek kings who are mentioned, and we'll see that this identification that they have is very questionable. So we have been talking about this alternative history for last 5 episodes, and so what we have discussed so far is that ancient Indian history has been constructed by going backward and forward from the two seat anchors of Indian history. And we discussed these seat anchors. And the first seat anchor that we discussed is the identification of Sandrocotus of Greek accounts with Chandragupta Maurya. And we discussed that this identification itself is questionable because we have another Chandragupta one of the imperial Gupta dynasty, who could be Sandrocotus as well.
So, Dr. Roy, your screen is frozen.
And in the last talk, I showed that the Devanam Priyadarshi of major rock edicts is actually Kumar Gupta one of the imperial Gupta dynasty. So now we are going to talk about the identification of the five Greek kings who are mentioned in the major rock edicts. And we see that the five Greek kings are mentioned in the 13th rock edict of Devanam Priyadarshi. And we see that in this rock edict, it is said that at the border, even as far as 600 yojanas, when the Yon king named Antioch is ruling. And beyond this Antioch, the four kings, Turme, Antikini, Maka, and Alexander. So he has mentioned these five Greek kings. And these five Greek kings, as I just said, Antioch, Turme, Antikini, Maka, and Alexander. And these Greek kings have been identified by the modern historians. And so Antioch is identified with Antiochus II, Theos, and his reign was between 261 to 246 BCE. Turme is identified with Ptolemy II, 285 to 247 BCE is when he ruled. Then we have Antikini, identified with Antigonus Gonatas. We have Maka, identified with Magas, and Alexander is identified with Alexander, but not the Alexander the Great, it's the Alexander of Epirus. So we have got these five identified. And based upon this, if you look at those timelines, then you see that all of those five, these Greek kings, their rules intersect at around 258. So between 258 and 261 is the only time when all of the five Greek kings are ruling. So that is the time historians say that is when this 13th rock edict was written. And so if that was the 12th year of his reign, then Asoka got coronated between 270 and 273 BC. So this is how the chronology has been constructed. So we have got the historians identifying all these Greek kings, but we have been discussing that the whole picture is wrong, and we have the imperial Gupta dynasty as the contemporary of Alexander and Seleucus. So if that is so, then there has to be another answer or another identifications of these five Greek kings. So what we have is that we have got this rock edict, and it says in the edict, Antioche Nama Yona Raja. So we have got all these five Greek kings named Antioch, Turme, Antikini, and Alexander. And what we get from that, from this part where the five kings are mentioned, is that you have the prominence of Antioch. So it says that where the Ion king named Antioch, and beyond this Antioch, and then those four other Greek kings are mentioned. But obviously, you can see that the closest relationship is with Antioch. So this Antioch is the one we can say that Devanam Priyapriyadarshi was in touch with, and those other four kings, which are further far away, he probably had just got their names somehow. He just heard about them. And you get that influence from the second major rock edict as well. And this is the second major rock edict. And in this one, you see, it says that everywhere in the dominions of Devanam Priyadarshi, and who are at his borders, such as Cholas, Pandyas, Satyaputras, Karadputras, Tamraparni. And then he says the Yon king named Antioch and the other kings who are the neighbors of this Antioch. So he says here that he only basically know in the second one, rock edict when it was written, he basically just knew about Antioch, and he did not even mention who are the other kings that are his neighbors. So the question is that when we talk about Antioch and his identification is with Antiochus, it's not unique, because if you look at what is Seleucid dynasty, so basically when Alexander died and his empire was divided between his chieftains, and Seleucus Nicator got the major chunk of it. And so after him, the ruler was his son, Antiochus I, and he ruled between 281 to 261. And after him is the Antiochus II, Theos, reigning between 261 to 246 BC. And it is this Antiochus II who, according to the historians, is the contemporary of Devanam Priyapriyadarshi. But we have got other Antiochus also. We have got Antiochus III between 223 to 187 BCE. That's when he reigned. R is for reigning. And then we have got Antiochus IV. In fact, it goes on to Antiochus XIII towards the dying days of this Greek Empire, 69 to 64 BCE. Now, similarly, if you talk about the Ptolemy, he has been identified with Turme. So even the Ptolemy is not one single ruler. There are a series of rulers, just like Antiochus. And so these rulers who are named Ptolemy, they ruled over the Egypt, which was under Alexander's empire. And then we have a succession starting from Ptolemy I, and then we have Ptolemy II, Philadelphus, and we have 285 to 246 BC. So the historians are making him the contemporary of Devanampriya Priyadarshi. So Ptolemy II, and we have got then Ptolemy III, 4, 5. In fact, that also goes up to Ptolemy 13, 55 to 47 BC is when he ruled. So how are we going to know which Ptolemy is mentioned? Is the Devanampriya Priyadarshi? He did not say 1, 2, 3, 4. And same with the Antiochus, which one? And this is not just like a academic question. This is a very, very important for uh, our reconstruction of Indian history. So basically, we ask which Antiochus and which Ptolemy is referred to in the 13th major rock edict of Devanampriya Priyadarshi. And here, I take you to some passages in a beautiful paper written by Carpentier, 1931 paper. And these, you can see that these questions have been asked before. These identifications have been challenged, and it's very, very important. And here he says, now who is this Antiochus, king of the Yavanas? To this question, various replies have been given, and it may not be out of the way shortly to review them here. Prinsep, when first interpreting these inscriptions, suggested that we have a mere mention of Antiochus III, who during the earlier part of his reign rightly earned the surname of the Great. This suggestion was only a natural one, for Antiochus III is the one of all the Seleucids bearing that famous name of whose dealings with the Indians we are aware. So basically, you see that when the first identification was made, it was with Antiochus III, not Antiochus II. And then he says Antiochus II, surname probably by the grateful as Theos, so his surname Theos is the god, was the youngest son of Antiochus I. And he died suddenly in 246 BCE at the age of just 40. And he, like at least one of his successors, seems to have been a special favorite with the scandal mongers. So you know that Antiochus II is the son of Antiochus I. And this is the important part. What interests us in this connection is, however, noting much the character of Antiochus II as the main events of his reign. So what happens during his reign? He undoubtedly inherited from his father a war with Egypt, which came to an end only during his very last years, and an unbroken series of troubles with the petty despots and quarrelsome city-states of Asia Minor. So basically, we are talking about this area in Turkey. And as far as the very scanty evidence goes, Antiochus II spent the whole of his reign in the last named country and in Syria. So basically, Antiochus II was bogged down in wars during his whole reign at the western border. So he was in Syria and Turkey all these years of his reign. So he was nowhere close to India. And there is certainly no evidence whatsoever for having ever proceeded to the east of the Mesopotamian rivers to visit the outlying provinces of his vast and loosely knitted empire. Furthermore, we have the direct evidence from the historians, above all that of Justin, that during the reign of Antiochus II, the most important provinces of the east rebelled, an event which must have entirely cut off the connections between Mesopotamia and the borderlands of India, until these were again, for a very short period of time, restored by Antiochus the Great. So basically, you have is that he has got rebellion on the close to Indian side also, and it's cut off. So he has no connections with India. So it was only after him that Antiochus III came to the border of India, and there is also mention of him talking to his Indian counterpart. So what we have is that Antiochus II could not possibly have been the Antiochus that is mentioned in the major rock edicts. So so this is the Antiochus that the modern historians have identified as the contemporary of Devanam Priyadarshi. But on the other hand, what we have is the Antiochus III fits perfectly with the identification of Kumargupta I with the Devanam Priyadarshi. So if you have starting with the Chandragupta I as the contemporary of Alexander the Great, the reign of Kumargupta I will overlap with the reign of Antiochus III because he is the great grandson. So the timing will match. And about Antiochus III, we have the definite information that he came to India. He was in contact with India. So if Antiochus III was the great, Antiochus III the Great was the Antiochus that's mentioned in the major rock edicts, then who were the other four kings? And the answer to that has been provided by Professor Wilson. At that time, he was the director of the Royal Asiatic Society. And he has written on it, on the identification of Ashok Mad with Devanam Priyadarshi. And this is a paper he wrote in 1850. And he said that Priyadarshi appeared to have lived either at the same time with or subsequent to Antiochus. And could this have been the case if he was Ashoka? So for me, the determination of this question, we must investigate the date at which the two princes flourished, so far as the materials are available. And the first point to be adjusted is which Antiochus is referred to. See, that is the very important question that historians have asked, like which Antiochus? Because there is not one. And there are several of the names amongst the kings of Seleucidian dynasty, whose sway commencing in Syria extended at various times in the early periods of their history through Persia to the confines of India. Of these, the two, the Antiochus Soter and Antiochus Theos, were too much taken up with the concurrences in Greece and in the west of Asia to maintain any intimate connection with India. And it is not until the time of Antiochus the Great, the fifth Seleucid monarch, that we have any positive indication of an intercourse between India and Syria. So he's also saying the same thing, is that it was the Antiochus III the Great who would be the Antioch of the major rock edicts, not his predecessors Antiochus I and Antiochus II. So what he's saying that we must look therefore not to the dates, but the notoriety of the names and the probability of their having become known to India for the identification of the person intended. Under this view, I should refer Alexander to Alexander the Great, Antigonus to his successor, Magas to the son-in-law of Ptolemy, Philadelphus, and Ptolemy to either or all of the four first princes of Egypt, and Antiochus to the only one of them we know from classical records to have visited India, who from the purport of the inscription we may infer was known there personally, Antiochus the Great. So he identifies rightly that the Antiochus, Antioch mentioned in the major rock edicts was Antiochus III the Great, not the Antiochus II. And if that is the case, and this is important, in this case, we obtain for the date of the inscription some period subsequent to BC 205. So then he says the inscriptions are written subsequent to 205 BC. But if you come to 205 BC, it seems very unlikely that Ashoka was living. So if you start with Chandragupta Maurya as the contemporary of Alexander the Great, then his grandson Ashoka won't be ruling in BC 205. We have the historians Ashoka's rule is given as around 258 to 61 BC. So that's when they say that these are major rock edicts were written. So this is clearly 50 years later. So he cannot be there in that. So it becomes really it can happen. So we check the 13th rock edict again, and here is the translation, and it says that when the Yon king named Antioch, and you see that they have put in the bracket words that make it a continuous flow into a sentence and give a meaning. And so it says is ruling, but the is ruling is not there in the inscription. So similarly, you have beyond this Antioch, 4 kings, and again are ruling in the brackets, named Turme, named Tantikini, named Maka, and named Alixudar. So if you take out all these parentheses, then what we are left with? We are left with where the Yon king named Antioch. And beyond this Antioch, 4 kings named Turme, named Antikini, named Maka, named Alixudar. So what you basically have is that the inscription does not say that all these 5 kings are ruling at the time the inscription was written. So it just basically is saying that, of course, Antioch is known. So Antioch was ruling. But beyond that is the land of these people. So those people are not necessarily contemporary of Devanam Priyadarshi. They have happened sometimes before, and he has come to know them. So they are either his contemporary or his just before his time as well. So we don't have this condition that all 5 of them need to be ruling when the 13th rock edict was written. So basically, I'm living in Canada, and someone asks me, "Where are you from?" And if I say that I am from the land of Swami Vivekanand, does it make me the contemporary of Swami Vivekanand? And this is a very important point, that while Antiochus was definitely the contemporary of Devanam Priyadarshi, the other 4 kings were either his contemporary or before his time. So basically, we have explained these 5 Greek kings, who they were, and we have shown that there is no contradiction in having Kumargupta I as the Devanam Priyadarshi. So to complete the whole scenario, all the questions, what we need to do is we need to answer why there is a mention of Devanam Priyadarshi Ashok on some of the minor rock edicts. Because it is based upon these, so there are some minor rock edicts which say Devanam Priyadarshi Ashok. So the Ashok's names is there, but those are the minor rock edicts, and based upon that, we are claiming that the Ashoka of major rock edicts is the Devanam Priyadarshi of major rock edicts is also Ashok merge. So basically, we have to understand the meaning of these 3 words. So if you go for Devanam Priya, basically means the beloved of the gods. And this is a title that has been used for many kings. In fact, the princeps who identified Devanam Priyadarshi with Ashok merge, he had first identified Devanam Priya with the Tissa of Ceylon. And we had different excerpts for that. And in this one, 1837 paper, he says, "I trust this point has been set at rest, and that it has been satisfactorily proven that the several pillars of Delhi, Allahabad, all these places were erected under the orders of King Devanam Priyadarshi of Ceylon." So you see that initially even thought that that king was not from India, he was from Ceylon. And then another one is a paper, 1914, and it says it is a well-known fact that Ashoka's name does not occur in the inscriptions, but that these purport to emanate from a king who gave his formal titles in various Prakritic forms. And James Prinsep identified Ashoka's edicts to Devanam Priya Tissa of Ceylon. So is that there is nothing unique about this title, Devanam Priya. And it has been used as a title by King Dasrath also, as we saw in that excerpt. And what we have is that the title has been used for other personalities in the literature. So King Ajat Satru has been called Devanupriya, so basically Devanam Priya, in the Opatik Sutra. And then Patanjali, when he's in his commentary on Panini's Astadhyaya 2.4.56, he has used this title Devanam Priya for a common grammarian. And so we come to the meaning of Priyadarshi. And Priyadarshi or Priyadarshan can have 2 meanings, whether one who looks handsome or one who looks with friendliness. So Priyadarshi was an adjective that has been used for several kings. So again, there is nothing unique about Priyadarshi. In the Ramayana, Lord Rama has been called Priyadarshi. In the play Mudra Rakshas, Chandragupta Maurya has been called Priyadarshi. So not just Ashok Maurya. we are applying that to Ashok Maurya, but his grandfather Chandragupta Maurya has been called Priyadarshi. Gautami Putra Satkarni, he has been called Priyadarsan in the Nasik inscription. So what basically you have is again just like Devanam Priyadarshi is also just a title, and this can be used by any king. So there is nothing unique about it. And then we come to the meaning of Ashok. So we know that the Ashok is joined by A and Shok. So basically means that one who has no sorrow. And again, this could be also used as a title, just like Devanam Priya and Priyadarshi. It does not even need to be a personal name. So in Sanskrit literature, you have Priyadarsan as a constant epithet of the Asoka tree. And so much so that the Priyadarsan became another name for the Asoka tree. And that's from a paper in 1997-98. This is the reference for that. So basically, for this Devanam Priya Priyadarshi Ashok, you can have two possible explanations. Of course, one is that the minor rock edicts belong to Ashok Maurya, but you cannot identify based upon that the major rock edicts also belong to Ashok Maurya. So they can be two different persons, because Devanam Priya Priyadarshi is just simply a title that can be used by different kings. And also, you can have a second possibility that Kumargupta I was using the Asoka as a title. That's also possible, just like Devanam Priyadarshi. So basically, what we have is that Kumargupta I had the example of Ashok Maurya to follow. Consider that he has become a Buddhist, as I have shown in my earlier talks. And if it was so, then he was being asked by the Buddhist monks to match Ashok Maurya in terms of his generosity and spread of Buddhism. And Asoka means person with who has no suffering, is beyond the feeling of suffering, is the central philosophy of Buddhism. So becoming Asoka, in a sense, is the aim of every Buddhist. So when Kumargupta considered himself to have attained this state and considered himself to have matched Ashok Maurya in his endeavors to spread Buddhism, he might as well have adopted the title Asoka. So basically, the point is you don't have a solid, concrete evidence that we cannot negate. So basically, what we have seen is that the current historians have interpreted the existing evidence in a certain way, but those same evidence can also be interpreted in another way that opens up to another timeline of Indian history. So basically, this ancient Indian chronology is based on the identification of Devanam Priyadarshi of major rock edicts with Ashok Maurya, and this major rock edict mentions 5 different kings, and they have been identified with Antiochus II and Ptolemy II and other Greek kings that I have talked. But the one that they have identified, Antiochus II, he could not be the Antioch mentioned in the major rock edicts, because during his time, he was engaged in constant warfare at the Western Front, and the access to India were cut off during his reign. So, and that means that the Antioch has to be Antiochus III the Great, but his rule is much later, and that is incompatible with Ashok Maurya's timeline, Ashok Maurya being his contemporary. But there is no such contradiction if we have got Kumargupta I as the Devanam Priyadarshi, because he is the great grandson, while the Ashok Maurya is grandson. So obviously you have a 1 generation difference, and so the Kumargupta I can be contemporary of the Antiochus III if Chandragupta I was the contemporary of Alexander and Seleucus. And I will be talking about the timeline that I have developed for this. So in the next presentation, I will be talking about the reconstruction of Indian history. So far, what we have done is we have in detail gone through the evidence that has been used to construct the Indian history the way we know it. And we have shown that we can interpret the same evidence in a different way that opens us to an alternative timeline of Indian history. And the most important event in this construction is, of course, the invasion of India by Alexander. So, what happened during this invasion? What happened in the war with Porus? I'll talk about that in my next talk. So, thank you so much, Aditji, for giving me this opportunity. Thanks to Dr. Mahendra Thakur for organizing this talk, and thanks to Sattology team also for organizing this talk. Thank you so much.
So one of the things questions comes is, again, the question is, see, if you go by the Bhagavad Puran timeline, then Mahapadma happens 1150 years after the birth of Parikshit. And Mahapadmananda was replaced by Chandragupta Maurya, Chanakya. This is Bhagavad Puran's timelines. And the timelines which you said, and Greek historians themselves debunk themselves again and again. And so building see, the chronology is important for them, but not for us, because we believe in cyclical time. And we Kali Yuga, Satyuga again, then Treta, Dwapar, Kali Yuga again. And they believe in chronology because their history has a beginning. Our history has no beginning. Our history starts with the first day of Brahma, first hour of Brahma. You know? And Brahma is supposed to be in the middle age now, 51 years old. And so when we see that they themselves are debunking their own chronology, and the entire Western world and European world, not Western, European Christian world, believes in that theory because that is the theory which they came up with, and they have to live with it. If they say that it is not true, that means they are not true. They have no identity then. So how can we trust whatever they are saying, that this guy met Chandragupta, or we are, see, what the problem with the Indian historians sometimes happens is that we justify them more than they can justify themselves. We say, same like Imran Khan said, we know their history better than us, them. So we have that mindset. Same Imran Khan's mindset is with the Indian leftists also. They are both same categories. They want to create history for everybody else. So how do you fit in that who met who when they themselves are saying we are not true?
Absolutely, Aditji. So our work is to do a detailed study and put all the proof there, put all the evidence there. And so that's what I'm doing, that we are going into the details because the devil is in the details.
That's
they
right.
have thrown up something and it has just stuck. And we don't know the details of it. See that once you start digging and then you see there are so many inconsistencies.
Right.
And this is a very, very important, what we have discussed here, is that they identify this Antioch with Antiochus II. But he could not have been Antiochus II. It has to be Antiochus III. But if you have Antiochus III, then Ashok cannot be.
True.
That Devanam Priyadarshi, because he is much earlier.
The whole theory of Buddha attaining Nirvana, it's a fake story, because Vishnu never, and Vishnu he's mentioned as the first incarnation of Vishnu in Kali Yuga, and he came to reject the Veda because people were misusing Veda. It's written in Bhagavad Puran very clearly. He rejected Veda because people were misusing Veda to kill animals unnecessarily. He's the first avatar only focused on killing of the animals, and so generally when the Vishnu comes, he's already known to be fully knowledgeable. There is no need to attain Nirvana. There is no mention in Bhagavad Puran and other Vedic literature that he had attained Nirvana. Enlightenment is for the humans like you and me. Like we do yoga and then we understand something and we engage in sadhana. But for Vishnu avatar or Shivji to come down, there's no enlightenment. Shivji, you don't see Shivji attaining enlightenment. Shivji he's already enlightened. He's already there. He himself is Shiva Tattva. So how do we answer these kind of questions which are not in line with the thought process of the Shastra? and then you try to fit chronology into it. Now this, you're doing a wonderful work, because you are trying to get into the details of what they're saying, and now we see the holes, loopholes right away. You know, how many Antiochus, like for example Shah Jahan, people do not know there was five Shah Jahan. Shah Jahan 4 was the last one, you know? And the
Right.
Bahadur Shah Jafar was many of them, but last one was Bahadur Shah Jafar was replaced.
Yes.
So what do you have to say on this?
It's a very open field. What you will say that the further in the past you go, I mean, obviously you have got so much questions. But what I am showing that we don't even have to go to the time of the Buddha. Right at the time of Alexander, we have problem. Right
Yeah,
after Alexander, we have problem. We have problem all through, not just in the past, but the whole system, a whole history that we are told, starting from Alexander to all the way to the Arabian invasion. That whole thing is wrong, and that's what we are going to show. So I don't even have to go that much in the past. We have
that's
to
right.
go into the onwards from the Alexander, from the time of Alexander to the time of the Arabian invasion. And I'm going to talk to you slowly one by one. Is that we have got big problems right there. We don't even have to go to the problems before.
True, true. No, I like the way your approach is. You know, you're debunking the most commonly held claims they have, and
And for that part, we have more evidence. Like in
more
the past, they will say, "Oh, this is mythology. This is that. Is that?" But here we are talking about inscriptions. You
correct.
cannot deny inscriptions.
And sometimes the inscriptions can be also written. See, the problem with the Greek historians today and as well as the past. You go to Greece. Greece is a very poor country, and you go to Greece, and people are fat, plump. So what they show in the sculptures as a Greek and Indian Bollywood movies says the Greek looks. I said the real Greek looks are very ugly. Our, in India, a normal person is far more healthier than the Greek gods and goddesses, whatever they show up. The sculpted figures was the imagination. It's
Correct.
not the reality, you know. So, like in the case of Pandavas, it is mentioned they were doing exercise every day. They were lifting heavy things. They were Vyayam was a regular part of the series. The yoga was regular part of the daily regimen. But they've not mentioned they've not said that he has a chiseled body or the six abs and he had the sunken cheeks. They've not mentioned any of those things. You
Correct.
know, they have mentioned that they were just healthy. But the
Yes.
Greeks go to the level of creating an image of a man like the Hercules they'll create, which is unrealistic. If you look at the today's Greek population, see in India, when I travel to India, I saw generally people fitter than most Americans are. Generally, not uh, as compared to general Americans. As general, if you compare, they're fitter. They're not extra fat. They're not obese. But if you look at the general Americans, is obesity is a major problem here.
Absolutely.
And if I go to Greece and I was in Greece and Rome, very unhealthy diet. I mean, how can you become healthy by eating pasta? You
But they
cannot.
will talk about the Mediterranean diet.
Yeah, better. Like they are superimposing somebody else's diet on themselves and trying to claim to be a healthier one. So, looking at just by edicts, how can you say that these edicts are also real? Because the rest everything is not real. Then how can edicts be real?
I mean, we are not talking about the edicts, like the way you talked about the Greek kings, but these are talking about the people. The normal things. Like he says that okay, he's the Antioch is at the border, and then beyond him there are these four kings. So there you have the amount of believability. Like there is nothing is sitting saying being said that would seem like out of ordinary,
Yeah,
right? I, I I mean, you'll have to critically analyze everything, including the inscriptions. But the inscriptions seem, at least at the face of it, they seem to be of more weightage than other types of evidence.
that's right. That's right. See, in the case of our historians, I'm talking about the not the today's Indian historians, because today's Indian historians are just parroting whatever is being told to them. But the real historians like Vyasdev and our ancient historians, they mention these stars' positions, which nakshatra, which lagna person is born. Yudhishthir is very specific. and what time he's born, what time. So then it makes it so mathematical that if you know to how to read the charts and the star positions, you can only come up with 10 or 15 dates in last 5,000 years, or maybe 15, 20 dates in last five. Like the same star positions can be in 15 dates. But if you put it on Hastinapur or in north of Kashmir, then you exactly know which day was that. So then that's how you, the theory of elimination, you can do. This is not 90, 90, 90, 90, 90. Yes. But these guys have no such thing.
This is also a very fascinating point you bring, Aditi. And there again, we have the same question: how do you know? So what's happening right now is that we have got all the astronomy software, and people are using it thinking that these are accurate, but they are not accurate.
True,
Nothing is accurate 5,000 years ago.
true.
They have all got the error limits, and if you look at that, then it's very difficult to verify these positions.
No, they have to use your traditional pen and pencil mathematics, not the
Exactly.
softwares.
We have to do it from the first principle. You
For
cannot
the first one.
just blindly rely on the software that this is the position, because
Correct.
they are all based upon modeling. These are all simulations. And
Yeah.
what happens in the simulation in science, what you do, you always got to check it, verify it. But how are you going to check it? What was 5,000 years ago? How do you know? How do you know that the software is right? So that's a big question.
Yeah, most of the time these softwares themselves, they say the person who wrote it that he did not extrapolate more than 5,000 years.
Right. Because our data is very limited.
Yeah.
So, and this is a very complicated subject. Hopefully, we'll talk about it some other time.
Yeah. But for the Greeks, none of that is available. Even then,
Right.
that is not available to them because they believe in the solar calendar. Solar calendar, you cannot calculate many things. Yeah, you can calculate days, but you cannot calculate, go back into the dates. You have to depend on something else, which is moon closer, and it can be more referenceable. Uh, so anyway, I mean, it's good. Even in the softwares, I'll tell you, it will throw up 5 dates, 6 dates, 7 days, 10 dates. Now you have to do the neti, neti, neti. But if your basis of the software is set at something, if you don't know, then automatically you're wrong because you're not.
Absolutely. Some people are just using the software, but you got to know what how the software works. What is there? What can you believe to what extent? Because everything is complicated. See,
That's
the
right.
only thing that you can be very sure of is the position of the sun because it's the heaviest, and you are measuring according to that. Then you go to the planets, then will be less accurate. Then you go to the moon. You have no accuracy at all.
That is also very interesting. In the Shastra, if you read Bhagavad Gita, then Shashi is called Nakshatra, is a Nakshatra. Shashi is Nakshatra. Surya is also Nakshatra. So there is Graha, the concept of Graha, which we say planets. Now again, we are putting meaning into the English language. Graha means planet. Graha means residence. And so when Matali takes Arjun to Swarga, he says these are all the residences of different great rishis. And then he takes to there. So then again you are, and also if you go to the Bhagavatam reference and Mahabharata reference, then there is the whole references come to about different positions of different uh, nakshatra in the sky. So what the Western historians have done is constellation is nakshatra. Constellation is not nakshatra. Krishna says nakshatra nam aham shashi. Of all the nakshatra, I am shashi. So that means the whole thing that moon is a planet of the earth. That is a Western mindset. But if you look at Bhagavad Gita mindset, is totally different. So I think that's where the dating, we have to move in that area. We have to really use just the Vedic concepts, no giving meaning to the Western world. But what you have done is interesting, very interesting. You've broken down. So now if Greek viewers are watching, Greek Americans are watching, this is good homework actually. Just watch it and see if which one is the real Ptolemy, which is the real Antiochus. That's a good point. But again, we have to question everything till we are satisfied logically and put the entire. What you're doing, Dr. Roy, is you're defining their history right now or questioning their history version. And the foolish Indian scholars, academics, they have not done any such thing. They are just twiddling their fingers because somebody has told them, yes, sir. Okay. That's not the way education works, isn't it?
See, Aditya, if the historians that we had, and they were leftist historians for most of these times, if they were just doing what you just said, is even like pretend that what is there, accept that, but it's not like just denying the history, but they are making of the history, right? So that's even worse. They are trying to make us proud of people who have done undescribable horror to our ancestors, and that's the part that pains me most.
Very true. Very true. They're making up the history, they're creating new history, and they're trying to impose that this is the right version. And if you question, you're out of the league. You won't get a PhD now, or you won't get. I rejected PhD from some American universities. I said, I don't want it because why should I validate myself through you? I have my whole parampara to validate me. So thank you so much, Dr. Roy, and it was a pleasure. And thank you for all the viewers for watching. I know today we started late, so again I apologize for the late show today. And thank you so much, and namaste. Have a wonderful Sunday.
Thank you so much, Aditya. It's a
Thank you.
pleasure. Talk to you again.
Thank you.